Patrick Mahomes completes the greatest pass in preseason history. Caleb Williams looks like the real deal. And we got to talk about Israel Adesanya. Welcome back to the Papa Shronos podcast. We're going to get straight into Chiefs football and the NFL preseason. Here on this one is Patrick Mahomes, man. That behind-the-back pass was quite the thing to see. I was in attendance in the first half, left about at halftime. Got to take my daughter to the game. It was pretty cool. And a good time out there at Arrowhead, as always. But that behind-the-back pass, man, that was crazy. I don't think that we will see that again. Maybe next preseason. Be on the lookout for it. I guess it's just something to add to Mahomes' arsenal. We've already seen the left-handed pass, the underhand throws, the whatever it was to Jerick McKinnon in that game against the Broncos a couple of years ago. I mean, the dude can do it all, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league for a reason, and he goes out and shows that time in and time out. And, you know, just the talk of, you know, the quarterback rankings and everything is always, you know, a hot discussion, obviously, off season, during the season, even more, and especially the lead up to the season is probably the most we talk about. Who's number one, who's number two, you know, who's in the top five and all of that. And I think that at this point, it's pretty prevalent that Mahomes is head and shoulders above everybody else in this league. And I just wanted to use this to kind of shine more light on that, just for the simple fact of social media going crazy over this throw, obviously. And, you know, some of the discussions it sparked online, and, you know, the best one, because really just to talk about Josh Allen and the hierarchy that personally I believe right now, when you're looking at the top three, is number one, Mahomes, obviously above everybody else. Number two, Lamar Jackson, I mean, a two-time MVP, a unanimous MVP at one point in time. And, you know, you can talk about whoever, you know, should have got the MVP last year. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Lamar Jackson got it and was, at this point, it's become a quarterback award. I think we're pretty well aware of that, because I think the biggest argument you could have made was for Christian McCaffrey. And, you know, also, you know, there's some argument for Dak there. How we perceive Dak Prescott, I think, is a lot on, you know, what he's done in the playoffs, which is absolutely nothing. And I think that that's what brings him pretty much below every other quarterback when you talk about kind of the hierarchy of things like we're talking about. But for the MVP last year, I think that weighs a little bit to a point, because it's just hard to see Dak as an MVP, I think, when he has had zero success in the postseason, and it seems like he kind of crumbles in the postseason. So, it seems like the Cowboys every year, they're very solid in the regular season, very good team, and then you get to the playoffs and it all just kind of falls apart. So going down that list, number 3 is Josh Allen. And there was a tweet by a Bills fan that I saw and kind of chuckled at, because the question raised was, what is Mahomes actually better than Josh Allen at? And really kind of gave the slide of basically he's got the refs on his side because everything else is a wash. Which I'll say that most of it's pretty much a wash. I think that obviously Mahomes is more accurate. The throwing power, I think, is a wash. Whatever the account was, they gave the throwing power to Allen, and said by a hair. And so basically the ultimate was the officiating. So the ultimate deciding factor was the officiating, which, you know, you say what you will about officiating here and there, and I've had my gripes with officiating plenty. If you go back or if you're a regular listener of my podcast, you know that at the end of the day, really the officiating, the biggest thing I would say is consistency. There's not a lot of consistency there, and even within games. I mean, in the Eagles Super Bowl, you know, the reason that people harped so hard on the holding call was the simple fact that they didn't call it throughout the game. They called it on the final drive of the game. It was a hold. It was very clearly blatant hold. There was a very clear blatant hold in the first quarter of that game that ended the Chiefs, I think, their opening drive. And I want to say it was a hold on MVS. held, could not catch the ball. If he wasn't held, probably would have catched the ball and got a first down. No call. Chiefs get a field goal. Get to the final drive of the game. That decides the game. But if the officials are letting you get away with it, you're going to keep doing the same thing, right? And I think a lot of defenses have that mindset of see what you can get away with. And it's just like a strike zone in baseball. I always kind of compare it to that because it's the same thing. That's the biggest gripe to a batter in a baseball game would be to not have a consistent zone. That's the problem. Consistency is the ultimate problem. And crew to crew, game to game, and even quarter to quarter sometimes. Because, again, we're talking about the same game. The same thing happened in the first, I want to say, it was the first drive of the game and the last drive of the game. There was a call on the last drive. There wasn't a call on the opening drive. So, no matter whether it was a hold or not. So, I think the consistency is the biggest thing for me. And it does work out in the Chiefs' favor sometimes. It works against the Chiefs sometimes. We've seen it go both ways. I mean, go back to the Raiders game, Monday Night Football, I think 2 years ago now. It was I'll always say, is the most fascinating game I think I've ever been to because the way that the crowd revolted against the officiating crew. Carl Sheffers and his crew that night don't know what they were doing, don't know what they were watching, what they were looking at, but they just weren't calling anything. It felt like every penalty was against the Chiefs in that game, and the Chiefs did end up prevailing in that game. That was the Travis Kelce 4-touchdown game. But you have to go above, I think, the officiating, essentially. You have to make sure that they're not going to be the reason that you lose a game. And the Chiefs have made sure that the officiating isn't going to cause them to lose a game. I think they've been very strategic and very, down to every last detail of the game. Just go back to last year's Super Bowl and how the 49ers staff didn't know the rules of overtime. But the Chiefs were ready. They'd practiced this. They were ready for an overtime game in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, you can call it what you want. To get back on topic, though, with the quarterbacks, the biggest thing for me, and one of the Bills fans, someone in Bills Mafia chimed in on this, and literally said, turnovers don't matter. That one right there, that whole notion that turnovers don't matter is fascinating to me. Because we've gotten to a point, and I'm going to go back to baseball again, because baseball, I think, has the most, the best way to kind of tie this together. Because the strikeout. Back in the day, it was you didn't want to strike out a lot, right? I mean, we looked at that stat, and, it goes hand in hand with everything you're doing, and being a disciplined hitter, and all of these things. So, but now you get into 2024, and you're looking at guys that are striking out 100, 150 plus times a year. Joey Gallo had the 40 plus home run season, or whatever he had a couple of years ago, but he also struck out, I think, almost 200 times. But that's seen as a success. The home run ball, the 3 outcome player, home run, strikeout, walk, has become more and more prevalent in baseball. And strikeouts don't matter anymore. And you see all these pitchers that have a ton of strikeouts. Now, granted, it is so hard to hit a pitcher in 2024. How fast these guys throw. The movement these guys are throwing. And I mean, don't get me started on when we had the sticky stuff and that whole issue. But it just goes to points don't matter. Or not points. I'm getting ahead of myself in my head. Strikeouts don't matter. So now, seeing that turned around into football, and, Bills Mafia, I see it most prevalent with, obviously, because you have a guy in Josh Allen that has turned the ball over so much more than everyone else in the league. 75 turnovers since 2020. That's a lot of turnovers. And I mean, it's 20 plus more than the next guy behind him. Or around 20. I don't remember off the top of my head where Mahomes was at. I think Mahomes was in the 50 range. But, Allen fumbles the ball a lot more. And so it got me thinking, because a lot of the defenses that I see is, well, the Bills still win a lot of games. He doesn't turn the ball over as much in the playoffs. Okay, and that's fair, because Josh Allen isn't necessarily losing these playoff games. But his defense is. And what it led me to thinking is Josh Allen puts his defense on the field a lot. A lot. 75 times. That's a lot. And in 75 turnovers has led to 226 points against the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen is responsible for 226 points against the Bills. And I do think this counts both regular season and postseason. So, my theory now has become Josh Allen makes his defense work a lot harder than they should. And a lot of times, and Chiefs Kingdom, help me out on this one, because we hear all the time how good the Bills' defense is. It seems like going into those matchups, well, you got a top 10 defense to worry about. The Bills have had a good defense throughout, it seems like. So Allen has a good defense behind him, has a top-flight receiver in Stefon Diggs until this year, has a good supporting cast. Dalton Kincaid last year came on. Was it Dawson Knox, the other tight end. You've had Gabe Davis in there, Khalil Shakir last year. I'm trying to think of some other Bills receivers that have been around the last few years. Cole Beasley. Supporting cast guys, right? Decent supporting cast guys. So what to me, all of a sudden the Bills defense can't hang in the playoffs. But is that an effect of the turnovers? Because of how much more they've had to work, how much longer they've had to spend on the field, in the trenches, putting more of their defense on film. Which, is what it is. You got 17 weeks. Anyways, 17 games. Anyways, to put on film. So, I don't know if I would put it too much on you're putting more on film, but just another thing to add, another layer. Kind of to peel back from that onion. Josh Allen may be disservicing his defense and breaking them down by the time they get to the playoffs. Is kind of my theory at this point. Because what other, at this point, and from the engagement that I've got from Bills Mafia, that's kind of where it's kind of spun my head, because they're not wrong. When I see somebody defending Josh Allen's turnovers, well, he doesn't turn the ball over as much in the playoffs. Okay, that's true. Josh Allen isn't the one losing these games. He's putting his team in a position to win. That's true, too. The defense falls apart. Okay, that's true, too. But when you go back and look at these rankings, which I will say, before this podcast, I didn't actually thumb through. I'm going off of memory of where their defense actually was, and I think I'm going to follow up on that, because to me it's just an interesting kind of rabbit hole to go down. Because, what is really going on with the Bills? Because at the end of the day, really the only thing you can say is that Patrick Mahomes is a winner, and Josh Allen is not. But I don't think in sport that's necessarily, you hear all the time, oh, that guy's he just wins. That guy's a winner. Tim Tebow, that was one of the things they always said about him. Something I kind of hammered the table for, too. He's a winner. He just wins. Won 2 national championships at Florida, a Heisman. The play he made in that game against the Steelers. Dude's a winner. I don't know. I don't know if is that the only reason? Just Patrick Mahomes has that ability to win. He's got the superstar ability to just win, and Josh Allen just does not have that superstar ability. I don't know if that's just the end of that, but it is interesting of the turnovers. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you think about that Josh Allen theory of just. Is he the one that's hampering the defense? Because 75 turnovers since 2021. It is head and shoulders above the rest of the league at this point. I don't think it actually has on here, but basically they broke it down to a tier list. Josh Allen 75 plus. He's his own tier. There's a whole tier with nobody on it, 65 plus. Then you get to tier 3, 55 plus turnovers. Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff. 50 plus turnovers. Mahomes, Cousins, Stafford, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield. 45 plus. Matt Ryan, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Tua, Jalen Hurts, and then the final tier. There was one more tier on there, but I don't need to read off everybody on there. I don't know. Interesting thought, though, with Josh Allen there. To stay on topic now, transitioning back to the Chiefs. Kadarius Toney, looking like he might get cut. I did not expect Kadarius Toney to actually get cut, just because they're not going to gain any cap space. The $2+ million is guaranteed what he's going to get. Might as well fill a roster spot. But after Saturday, I think it's tough to give him a roster spot. Guys like Nico Remillo that are making a name for themselves in camp in these games. I just think it's tough because when you look at that receiver room right now, and I think they'll be fine without Hollywood Brown. I think they showed that. And I'll link the film below because, one of the biggest things that I pointed out on the opening drive from Jacksonville on the film breakdown was just how Xavier Worthy kind of stretched the field. And he showed that, against the Lions. He showed the speed. That's going to be a tough dude to, take out of this offense. And when you do, there's going to be other stuff open. Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice. I'm still wary about the Rashee Rice situation. But I don't think that even if Rashee Rice does get suspended this year, I don't think it's going to overlap with Hollywood Brown. Heard Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest talking on 810 the other day about how the Hollywood Brown maybe week 3 could be really solid, possibly week 2, and outside chance at week 1. I don't know how true that is, but, just kind of speculating where he'll be at around that time. So I think that we'll at least get 3 or 4 games out of Rice before we get anything. And I want to say the court date's like in December. Might be a little bit earlier than that, but I almost feel like I remember reading the court date is December. And I don't think we're going to get anything from that, which that's another one. Just topple on top of all of it's the refs. The Chiefs are protected by the NFL. Got to wait for the legal process to finish out to usually what the NFL does. I mean, it depends, obviously. I think that's really bitten them before because of the Ezekiel Elliott situation. I think that was like 4 or 5 years ago now where he did get suspended, and I can't remember how many games, and the case ended up getting thrown out. And, I don't remember exactly what happened with that, but Zeke kind of got suspended for, really no reason because the legal process didn't go all the way through at that point. So I think it's a matter of time with Rashee Rice. I personally think that he's got a very good chance to still be suspended at some point this year, somewhere in the middle of the season. But I think the receiver room is ready to go. Even if they do lose one of those guys, I think Xavier Worthy is the X factor at this point for the Chiefs. And on film, it kind of showed. He showed that this week, that huge, I think it was 39-yard catch he had in the game on Saturday against the Lions. So offense, I'm pretty solid on. Other than that, still got Justin Watson in there, McCole Hardman as well. Sky Moore, who's a guy that's probably going to get a roster spot. I'd much rather see Nico Remillo on the team rather than Kadarius Toney. I just don't think there's anywhere that Kadarius Toney fits in. The running back situation is another really interesting situation now with the rise of Carson Steele. And Madden dropped the other day, and I was playing Madden and just going through the rosters. And Carson Steele's not even on the game. I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, nobody expected this kid to do what he's done. But I think he's absolutely earned a spot. And I don't know if Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if there's a spot on this roster for him either. And I've thought that him coming back as a role player would be good, but Deneric Prince has been able to fill in, and I think would be fine in that role that kind of CEH played. Then you kind of put Carson Steele in that role with, that you had McKinnon. I think obviously he's going to be able to chip. A guy that's almost like a fullback build that's playing running back. So, we'll see. I think the running back room's interesting. I think left tackle's pretty locked up. Kingsley Sumatia, he showed quite a little bit, I think, in the preseason. Obviously got some things to work on. He had the false start on Saturday, but a good base to start from, I think. I am excited about the offensive line. Once you get all those guys together, Sumatia, Tooney, Humphrey, Trey Smith, and then Jawan Taylor, which let me look up an update on Jawan Taylor, because I actually have not seen one on Jawan Taylor or an update recently. So let's see. So this would have been this past Wednesday. Shoulder injury. Reed was asked if he expects Taylor's injury to be long term. Reed responded, no, he won't go this weekend, but I think he's going to be okay. So we assume Jawan Taylor will be back for week 1. I think the Chiefs have a solid lineup to go into week 1 with. I feel much better about the Chiefs going into 2024 than I did 2023. I feel a lot better right now than I did halfway through 2023. I think I feel better right now than I did going into the playoffs last year. I think this team's solid and a lot of depth. And the defense, what they've done with the defense. I'd like to see a little bit more out of linebackers. But that secondary, Jaden Hicks, man, he really showed up in Jacksonville, and I think that he's going to be really solid. And an interesting topic of, do you extend Justin Reed? All of a sudden you start having those conversations. Now, Justin Reed is the leader of this defense right now, but I definitely see a world where after this year, Justin Reed is probably finding a new home somewhere. Very solid player, but the Chiefs have done this on defense, and the defense has kind of had a bit of a revolving door to a point, especially in the secondary. But how good they've drafted, it seems like they hit on every single guy in the secondary. No matter what round or where they're drafting. I mean, Brian Cook is another one. Now you've got Jaden Hicks, Chamari Connor, obviously Trent McDuffie, and the other guys from that draft in Watson and... Man, why do I always forget Josh Williams' name? Every time. But McDuffie, Watson, and Williams, I mean, what a draft class for corners there. And then you've got this hybrid Chamari Connor that can kind of play, he can play corner, he can play your nickel corner, he can play safety, he can kind of play all around. And that was one of the film reviews I did over the offseason that, Chamari Connor is a guy that really intrigued me. And just watching what he did in the postseason and then watching what he did on film all year. So I think the Chiefs are in a really good place. To our next topic is Mr. Caleb Williams, number 1 overall draft pick and Chicago Bear. There's a lot of hype on the Chicago Bears right now, right? Nick Wright even, I think he said he's picking them to go to the Super Bowl and represent the NFC this year. That's a little far-fetched for me personally. But I could see either a wild card. I don't think that they'll win the division. I just think the Bears and the Lions at some point are too much. But I do think this team could make a wild card appearance. I could see them making a wild card appearance and maybe losing in the first round. That's if I was going to put my money on something, that's what I'd put it on. They get to the wild card game, they lose. Because they're just not ready to take that step. But there are guys like Keenan Allen that's been in the league forever on that team. It could be, I think they're the dark horse of the year. They're almost the Lions of 2024. I think we had a better feeling how the Lions were going to be than we do the Bears. But in that same kind of realm, of being able to surprise us and push their way to the playoffs. And they're in a tougher division. And we'll see how Sam Darnold shakes out in Minnesota. Minnesota's a weird team. Seems like they're weird every year. You never know what you're going to get from them year to year. But so there's another kind of random team thrown in the mix in the NFC North. I think makes that division just a little bit tougher. Obviously not quite the AFC North, but it's a tough division when you're talking about the NFC. I think the AFC is definitely much better than the NFC as a whole, team to team wise. And I think that's what makes the NFC North that much more difficult, because I think you've got a certain range of teams in there. I mean, it's really, when you look at the NFC, I mean, you got the 49ers, the Eagles. Other than that, I mean, the Lions. I think I don't know. The Bears got a shot, though. I think the Bears definitely have a good shot at least making the playoffs. And Caleb Williams does look like the real deal. I guess get back to my main point. Instead of just talking about the Bears, we're talking about Caleb Williams specifically. And shout out to the QB school. I've been watching that channel for a couple of years, and he broke down. I'm excited to see his second breakdown. I'm sure by the time this drops, I'll have watched it. But the initial breakdown he did on Caleb Williams at Buffalo, I mean, Caleb Williams looked really good. The footwork, just everything. I thought Caleb Williams looked really good. And to be able to grow and be able to, really become a good quarterback in this league, we'll see. It's what the NFC needs. The NFC needs a really, really good quarterback to kind of help that conference even out against the AFC, which, Jalen Hurts has been good. I think, he regressed a bit, and we may have seen the best of Jalen Hurts. I mean, there's no telling. I think he can definitely get back to that level he was at 2 years ago now, but I don't think last year was as much, just wasn't it for him, I think we all expected more out of Jalen Hurts last year, and we'll see. We'll see. The NFC is going to be interesting. I think the AFC is a little bit more interesting, but the NFC is going to be fascinating, just so when you get to that lower level of playoff teams, essentially over there, how that's going to shake out, because all those divisions, they've got some interesting teams in there. And I think even with the NFC West, I mean, I don't know if I can pinpoint, well, obviously 49ers, but past the 49ers, any of those teams we could see kind of fluctuate and be possible contender, possible pretender. I don't know. We'll see. Always exciting to get into the NFL season. Always exciting. So, last but not least, so I'll go ahead and talk about kind of just with the podcast, what I've kind of decided is I was kind of separating podcasts. And obviously, if you notice, the logos, a little bit different for each certain podcast I'm doing, whether it's covering the Chiefs and football, covering MMA, covering baseball, a little bit different. Had the gray logo with the cage in the background for MMA-related episodes, the red and gold of the Chiefs, kind of to match that for the logo for football, and kind of had like a navy blue and red, kind of going off the Cardinals color scheme, as I'm a Cardinals fan, as I'm sure you know at this point if you've been listening to the podcast. But so I kind of decided to just nip that in the bud and just go ahead and Mondays putting out podcast and talk about everything. And maybe divvying that out a little bit differently on YouTube, but as far as your Spotify's and Apple Podcasts and all the other platforms that are, just streaming the podcast, I plan to kind of just put out a general podcast on Mondays about everything, and then, we'll see where it goes over on YouTube. But so to get into UFC 305, I'm going to focus on the main event on this card, because, I mean, it wasn't a huge card, I didn't think. Tai Tuivasa was kind of disappointing to see his loss to Rosenstrike. Let's see. I'm trying to even think about the rest of the card. Kai Kara France did have a good performance. Big knockout of Urseg. But getting into the main event, fascinating fight. Very fascinating fight, I will say. Through the whole fight, I feel like I could never really get a gauge on where the fight was going. I feel like a lot of times, and obviously there's huge shifts in momentum in a fight and things like that, but, you can start to get a feel of who the better fighter is, if they're even, if, just the flow, where this fight may go, essentially. And, you get it off a few different things, just movement of the fighters and body language and different things like that. You get a feel for the fight, right? And so this main event with Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya, I could never get a gauge on really where the fight was going. It seemed like in one moment, Izzy was dominating the fight. In one moment, DDP was, putting together some stuff. Although DDP seemed like he was throwing like 4 or 5 shots to land one, chasing Izzy down. And by that, was a 4th round finish, I think? Because we definitely got in the championship rounds. We'll look up exactly. I might be wrong. It might have been the 5th round. Can't remember exactly. 4th round, okay. 3 minutes, 38 seconds into the 4th round. Also, the Dan Hooker-Gamrot fight, that one was exciting-ish. Prates had a huge knockout. That was a wild knockout. And then trying to bum a cigarette from the media was pretty funny afterwards. But 4th round finish, RNC. I didn't see it coming, really. You kind of saw it coming once but I also never felt like Izzy was actually rocked. There was moments in that fight, and I kept saying, I watched the fights with Ray and B, and I kept saying I thought that his foot was hurt, or lower leg of something was wrong with the way he was stepping on his right foot. There was a couple moments where he stumbled over it. He had, I think on one of the drops was really a slip. Looked like it could have been a drop, but it was, looked like it slipped. I just couldn't figure out what was exactly going on with his foot, but it just seemed like there was something wrong. And I don't know, because I haven't really watched any of the post-fight coverage. I'm just going off of what I watched on Saturday night. But I thought something was wrong with his foot again, and, Dricus got the job done. I was definitely shocked. Once he tied up that RNC, it was obvious that it was over. I'm pretty sure he got that top hand tucked behind Izzy's head, and there was just no way you're going to get that top hand off and you're going to be able to stop that choke at that point. It was either go to sleep or tap out, and Izzy tapped out. And I think Izzy was, again, just the flow of that fight was so weird, because at moments it seemed like Izzy might be gassed. I thought Dricus, though, pretty much the whole time, I definitely felt like he was gassed. And the way he was fighting, made it easy to come to that realization of, this dude is tired. He looked tired, and he finished it, though. He was able to seal the deal. I was pretty surprised. On to the conversation about Israel Adesanya. Personally, I think retirement is the best option from here. He's not going to move up. He's not going to be able to move up. We already saw he wasn't able to beat Jan Blachowicz. And I don't think that he can hang at 205. And that's nothing against Izzy. It's just the size of these guys. The fact that Pereira ever even made 185, the fact he said he wanted to come back down, Dricus said he'll go up and fight him, which I don't think is a good fight for Dricus either way. I don't think that's a good fight for anyone right now in Alex Pereira, so we'll see. But, just seeing the guys that are at 205, the Yuri Prohashkas, the Ankalaev, Blachowicz, he already found out about. I think it is tough to think that he would be able to move up to 205. I don't know Izzy's weight cutting situation. This is one thing that I said. Could he cut to 70? I don't know if that would be the answer for him either. But I think that him continuing on in the middleweight division is just kind of stale. There's not really a fight out there I want to see Izzy have. And after that performance, I don't want to see a rematch with Strickland. That's not at the top of the list. Do we need a third Whitaker fight? Chimaev might be an interesting fight, but then again, after this performance, do we want to see Chimaev Adesanya? I think that he needs to take some time off, maybe give him 6 to 8 months off, and then see, kind of the feel, or, what the fans feel, and, how Izzy feels also, because to me it also kind of felt like Izzy might have lost his drive. in the sport, just in general. Because he just did not seem there in the Sean Strickland fight. And I mean, maybe Strickland's game plan did just absolutely nullify Izzy. I haven't watched that fight in, I don't know, I think I watched it a month or two after it happened, so it's probably been 8 months to a year. I'm not even sure when that went down. I guess last summer, I think. I don't know. And then this fight again. Because there was moments where he was absolutely lighting Dricus up. Some of those body shots were absolutely insane. And I definitely thought he was going to end up finishing Dricus. And that was kind of how the room felt. I mean, Dricus had his moments, but I felt like every time that they were standing, I was like, bro, you need to take him down. Like, Dricus needs to use all of his energy to either put Izzy up against the fence, try to take him down, weigh on him, try to work his cardio maybe. It did not feel like Dricus was in control of that fight at one point until he won the fight. I feel like was really the moment where it felt like Dricus was really in the driver's seat, because even when he had, I think it was in the second round, when he had Izzy on the ground and was trying to take his back and Izzy worked out of it. It looked like he was going to mount him at one point. Almost Izzy worked his way out of it, got up, and the kick that he threw was kind of hilarious, although a little dangerous. You hit him in the head, that's a fight over anyways. That's a DQ. But I don't know. Tough fight for Izzy, and like I said, I think retirement is probably the best suited for him at the moment. And kind of like my initial reactions from the fights this weekend, and my initial takeaway, when I saw him taking the gloves off in the cage, I thought that was the announcement he was going to make when DC came over to him. He didn't. I feel like he might have alluded to it just because the simple fact he kind of pointed out his family. He said, I will always fight for my family. And, just kind of felt like maybe hey, yeah, I'll always fight for my family, but I'm kind of done fighting. Like, is what that kind of came off to me as. So we'll see. I'm sure Izzy's going to take some time away, really think about it, and figure out what he wants his next move to be. But, I mean, dude's a superstar. I think he can pretty much do whatever he wants. I mean, he's going to be able to make money after this, whether, whatever he wants to, whatever endeavor he wants to go off onto after MMA. But right now I'm feeling Izzy should retire. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And, I mean, that's pretty much going to do it. That's all I had coming into this one. I just kind of wanted to talk about the games this weekend, or at least the Chiefs game, and kind of talk about the Bears for a minute. Caleb Williams, just because what he's putting on film looks good, and I do think that Caleb Williams has a future in this league. So, and I know it's been very polarizing with Caleb Williams, it seems like, here in the beginning stages of his career. Obviously the draft, and we'll see. I'm interested to see it play out. I'm excited for this year. So let me know in the comments below how you feel. Is Kadarius Toney staying, or is he gone? The Chiefs cutting Kadarius Toney. Let me know what you think about Caleb Williams. Is he going to be a superstar, or is he going to be a bust? And Israel Adesanya, retirement. Who's next for him? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Absolutely appreciate if you watched or listened all the way to the end. It means the world to me. Make sure if you're on YouTube, if you're not on YouTube, go over to YouTube. Smash that subscribe button on Papa Shiro YouTube channel. Smash that subscribe button if you are here. Make sure you hit the like button and ding the bell for notifications if you want to stay notified on all the film breakdowns, podcast, everything we got coming your way. As well as, just to mention on the subscribing, we're right around 250 as I'm recording this. I think 247. So we're 53 away from hitting that mark of 300. We just got a couple of weeks until the NFL season. By September 5th, I expect that to be 300. I know we can do that, and we smashed through the 200 mark just like a month ago or so. So smash that subscribe button for me. Let's hit this 300. And until next time, we will see you back on the podcast next Monday.